everyone, it's Lisa Danforth, business strategist and leadership vision coach. And today I'm here having a conversation with the fabulous and one and only Donna Cravata from Social Pivot PR. Donna and I have been dear friends for years. We're trying to figure out where we met. And we met online. Donna and I have never actually met in person, which just blows me away at how close we are and how much we share. I learned all about your son, Matt. And just how online, especially today, is really allowing us to stay connected, to really be able to gather. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But Donna is, I'm going to read this because she's got such a lengthy, she has done so many different things. Donna and her team work collaboratively with leaders, small business owners, authors, and nonprofits to accelerate their growth and impact by redesigning their online presence in a strategic, organic, and human way. I absolutely love that, right? It's all about being human. And that's what you're going to talk about today, is taking the time to pivot and lean into what is working and let go of what's no longer working. So I'm going to hand it over to you if you want to just share a little bit more about yourself with everyone who is watching. And whoever is watching, I hope you're relaxing, put your feet up, grab a cup of coffee, join in on the conversation. We'd love to have your questions. So Donna, I'm going to hand it over to you so you can explain a little bit more about all that you do with Social Pivot PR and the Gather method.
Okay. Definitely. Well, thank you for having me, and hello, everybody. And I'm very happy to be here, and I adore Lisa. We are the great friends that never met.
I still can't believe that.
But that just speaks to the testament of how you can really build powerful relationships without actually meeting people. And I don't believe that it's either in real life or online that you can have this flow of relationships that work both ways, either online or in real life. And it all comes down to being you and really embracing who you are as an individual, what your goals are, who you serve, what the impact is that you want to make, and really being clear on what you do and what you don't do. And then bringing that to life, whether it's in real life or online, and just being the same person across the board. And that's what people react to, because when you're trying to be somebody else, or you create this new online persona because you're not sure who you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to say, people sniff that out and they don't trust you. They don't like you. They don't want to know you. They're not curious to learn more.
Or they like you, but they can't quite figure out. There's something that's off, right?
Because it's not, they can feel that it's not you, and that you're holding something back, you're hiding something.
Not a congruency.
And I've been doing this a long time, and it's consistent across the board. I've worked with big companies, small companies. I actually started doing this work years ago, working in a law firm when none of this existed. But over the years of working, I realized how many things I did working in the law firm that I have brought into the business that I have now. And, social media didn't exist then. None of this existed then. But, I'm a big believer in when you're really in alignment and doing the work that you should be doing with the people that you should be doing it with, you pull together all of your parts. You don't leave anything out. You edit them, but you pull them together. Like the thing that you did 20 years ago is relevant now. And how does that mesh together with, what you're learning and what you're doing now? And people don't do that. I didn't do that. When I quit my law firm job in 2006 and started my business, I for a good 3 or 4 years of that was then, this is now, and I never wanted the two to meet. And I did my first training class, and somebody that was on the class called me up immediately afterwards, and she said, "How long have you been doing this? You're really good." And I said, "That was my first class." And she said, "That was clearly not the first time you've done this." And I said, "Oh, I did this for 10 years.
Really is, that never the twain shall meet, right? So that you don't want to bring that in. And I'd love to ask the viewers, whether you're live or watching the replay, how much of your life or your experience that you've had are you not bringing into what you're doing today, and sort of looking at that golden thread. Can you give a little tip on how to pull that in? Because I think so many of us don't think that it's either A, relevant, or B, we just don't want to share it. Can
Well,
you give a little insight? Because I know that
yeah,
that's a big piece of the work that you do, is that showing up and being human.
this is more of an insight than a tip, because when you hold back like that within yourself and you don't claim the experience that you have because you're doing something new, that hits your confidence level, because you're discounting like maybe 20 or 30 years of experience because it's not what you're doing now. So you're starting, maybe you're 30 or 40 or 50 or even 60 years old and starting something new, and you feel like meek and you feel small and you feel like your confidence level is not up there. You're not ready to, like, take on the world because you feel like you're just doing something for the first time and everybody else must know how to do this better. But when you start to incorporate those pieces and own that I have been doing this for 30 years, it might look different now, but that does not discount that I've done this for 30 years. 30 years is mastery. And when you can pull that mastery in and apply it to whatever form that work is right now, that changes everything, because you show up with a level of confidence that people can trust and believe in. And when you don't trust and believe in yourself, it's very hard to get anybody else to trust and believe in you, particularly when you start to become visible on social media, on video, through PR opportunities, through, sharing your voice, through teaching people or speaking. If you're not feeling that level of confidence, people are not going to jump on board and want to be part of what you're doing.
And I think we all absolutely have those moments, especially when we're diving in, of the lack of confidence, the imposter syndrome. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for 28 years. And I still bump up against that imposter syndrome. So I just want to share with everyone, you're never going to get rid of it. You won't be making decisions from that space anymore, and really looking at, what are those pieces that you can bring in? Because I know that when I first started coaching, I didn't want to bring in all of those entrepreneurial pieces that I've mastered. Yet it's exactly what has helped my business.
Yeah.
Is really being authentic and in alignment. So love that word, alignment, as you
Yeah.
continue over here.
So, yeah. And let's continue on that alignment piece here.
I just want to give a shout out to Leora Dowling. Thank you so much for joining us. She said, I'm fortunate because I use so much of my past experience in my work today. Leora is a professional speaking coach. I've worked with Leora, phenomenal, and all of her past comes in, and she helps people to do the same thing. So I love that. Thanks, Lee.
Yeah, thank you. It's true, because we can't, like, the people that are in our age group, the world has changed so drastically from when we first started to work. We cannot discount everything that we've done for all of those many years, because so many of the things that are relevant now are built on the same principles. Most of the work that I do is built on marketing principles from like the 1950s, because that's what works. I mean, it's about connection and relationship, people, providing customer service, providing what people need, what they're asking for, meeting them where they are. These are all things that are not new.
No, but they have been neglected for years, I think, and that's where we really got tripped up.
I don't necessarily think neglected is the right word. I think that the format has changed so much that people didn't know how to marry the two.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, like when I mentioned earlier about creating this online persona, so many people have this online persona that has nothing to do with who they are. And they created that because they didn't know how to pull it all together.
I think a lot of the bigger names were doing that as well, just out there in big and huge webinars that weren't producing much information. And that's what a lot of people I've seen over the years try to emulate, and trying to step into someone else's shoes.
Yes.
Instead of being authentic and in alignment with who they are.
And also, like, creating these one size fit all strategies and business models. There is no one size fits all. And, this is where one of the things that I often say is that the most overlooked marketing strategy is listening. Because people don't listen.
I
They're
would
so,
agree with you 110%.
they're so busy going out there trying to get their message out and be the loudest and be heard. But all you do is become part of the noise. But if you step back and you listen first, you figure out, okay, so who do I need to connect with? It's not everybody, because if you try to connect with everybody, you connect with nobody and you're just talking to yourself. But even if you find one person or 10 people or 50 people, like, where are they? Where are they hanging out? Are they on LinkedIn? If they're on LinkedIn, that's where you should be. If they're on Twitter, that's where you should be. You don't have to be everywhere. You need to be where they are and speak to them, listen to them. What do they want? What do they need? What are their struggles? But also, what makes them happy? What are their goals? Another marketing strategy that people often fall into is only focusing on people's struggles and their pain points. I don't want to be the solution to pain all the time. I mean, sometimes, yes, you want to do that. You
Yeah,
want to help
pager,
people,
that's
but you want to find people that are already happy and loving what they're doing, and they want to be happier and do it better. So like, finding those people that are, like looking to build upon the positive instead of pulling out from the dredges. You create a happier and more, just a happier business for yourself. So
more
like,
profitable. Let's admit
yeah,
that.
definitely profitable, but
Equals more profitable.
it doesn't feel like a sink. Like, it's not pulling you down. You want things that kind of pull you up. Otherwise, we're just creating these jobs for ourselves that we're probably being paid for less than we were when we had the jobs that we had.
With a probably meaner boss,
Yes.
demanding boss, I should say.
Yes, because we all say those things to ourselves that we would never allow anybody else to say to us.
Here is my kind of client. So
But
how would you suggest that someone start gaining clarity? Because I know you mentioned when you first started talking about that clarity, about really creating that vision. Because I think we so often get into action before we have a clear vision of where we want to go. And how do we determine what to say yes to, what to say no to? So can you share some tips, tools, and habits? I'm hot on habits these days.
I know.
Yeah. About how to
Yeah,
start getting that clarity.
definitely. Well, first, you want to be clear on what you do.
Mm.
Like, when I first started my business, I had a laundry list of things that I did that was like 4 pages long. I hated most of them. And it took me a couple of years to realize that I didn't have to be the person that provided every service related to anything online in the universe. And I started to whittle that down. It went from 4 pages to 2 pages to 1 page to now I do 3 things. And but I don't want to do anything else. And again, that rolls back to the confidence. When you have the confidence in the work that you do, because you're pulling back this history of, I've been doing this for 30 years, I haven't been doing this for 3 months. Because even if you're doing something for 3 months, you've got this army of experience behind you to lift up what you've been doing for 3 months. And that helps bring the clarity. The other thing that will help to bring the clarity is listening. Even if it's that one person, who's that one client that you loved working with, that everything just lines up perfectly and there was alignment all along the board, and you would work with clients like that all day long. Go see what they're talking about. See who they're connected to, because they might be connected to more people that are the same. What podcasts do they listen to? What books are they reading? I can't say this anymore, but what events do they go to?
Online, you can sort of follow, I suppose.
Online events. But how do they spend their time? What do they care about? All right, because this is another thing that helps you gain clarity, is most people talk about demographics. So demographics don't really matter, because you can have, two white 40-year-old women that live in Canada that have nothing else in common. But if you have people that are gathered together by what they care about, what they're passionate about, what has value to them,
Mhm.
then you can really start to build relationships. And it doesn't matter what color your skin is, how old you are, where you live, because what gathers you together is your core values. And
You introduced me to David Allison's
yeah,
work from Value Graphics, and I've got to say that's pivotal. If all of you watching, be sure to check out either on YouTube or check out his book Value Graphics, because Donna, when you introduced me to him, well, just his work,
yeah,
absolutely pivotal.
yeah, it changes everything because you start to you look for people in a different way. You know, you're not looking for somebody who has the same color hair or face or skin, or it doesn't matter. And you look for the people that care about the same things that you do. And then that's where you can connect on such a deeper level. Because I mean, like, think about if you've got children, how you have these very close relationships with the families that your kids go to school with, because you have this thing that you all care about your children that are together, and people that have dogs that go to dog runs, and they build these relationships with people around their dogs, and they show up every day to walk their dogs. They have this whole, it's like this little subculture that happens around this thing that they care so much about. So when you can build your relationships, business and personal relationships, and I find that when you do this, there's really no line because your friends become your clients and your clients become your friends. And marketing changes as well because you're not selling anything. You're meeting somewhere around the same value system, and maybe you can help them, and they were going to pay somebody anyway, so why not pay this person that I really like and trust? And
Right.
that's how it works.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
was
I don't market at all. I have been heads down. I have been heads down with this giant client for months. I haven't even done a Facebook post. I had 4 phone calls last week of people that recommended people to me.
from so many years. And I love what you were saying earlier and how you started this with the clarity, which is know what you do and basically know who your client is. And which is why you've had 4 people reach out, because you've been congruent for years of who you are and what your services are. I just want to share a really quick story of when I had my catering business. I ran a very high-end boutique catering business for 14 years. And what I wanted to do was to double down on high-end cocktail parties and just really focus on the cocktail parties. I had so many people tell me, don't do it, you're going to leave so much money on the table. But when I finally listened to myself, right, not just listening to others, but listening to myself, but also just said, this is what I want to be doing, I grew my business tenfold because I was letting go of all those other projects that I didn't particularly like. So I was able to connect with the clients that I wanted to connect with, market the way that I wanted to market, get myself out there and talk that was in a way that's in alignment with the clients that I wanted to bring in. And then I got very well known for that. So having that clarity and knowing who your clients are and how you serve them
Yeah.
in business, it absolutely can create the impact.
It really matters. And I'll share a story too. This big project that I'm working on now, it's a client that I worked with, a nonprofit that I worked with. I started working with them maybe 4 years ago, and we worked together for about 2.5 years. And then they didn't have the bandwidth to do any more marketing. So I set them up so they would be automatic. We built out, I think, about 1,500 social posts into a social media management tool that were very generic. And I wrote a series of articles that all kind of went out automatically. They just had to click a few buttons. I did a few videos, but they had this running for about 2 years without touching anything. And then they called me back because they had gotten some budget and they were ready to do some things and some opportunities as well. And one of the opportunities they wouldn't have gotten without the work that I had done for them. So they wanted me to be part of that. But because I hadn't worked with them for 2 years, I had to go into an RFP process, and it
Which
was me.
is
Yeah,
just for people who don't know,
request for professional services, and it was me, and I think it was 6 other companies, and some of them were like way bigger and very established locally, which mattered for this client. And I got the contract because they told me that I understood the language of their heart.
right? Because you set it up and knowing their voice and listening to what it is that they wanted to accomplish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that one project has now turned into I think it's 9 projects now.
So the story here, you don't have to be huge. You
Yeah.
need to listen, you need to be clear, know who it is that you want to work with, and start getting out there
Yeah.
and just doing it, imposter syndrome and all. So
Yeah.
there's the clarity piece. Can you talk a little bit now? You know who your clients are, you know what you want to be doing. Can you talk a little bit about the strategy piece of the work? And you were saying how pivoting and letting go of what's no longer working and leaning into, in this new world, this new era, what is now working.
Okay. So people don't want to be sold to. They just don't want you hawking your wares. And I think when people are going to spend money, they're going to spend money with people that they already like and trust and know. And you just need to get to know more people. And
But not even that many. I know one thing that you have said is when you really slow down and look at it, we think we need to be attracting millions or at least thousands and thousands of people. But can you break that down a little bit? Because I know you've spoken intimately about it and it's so impactful.
so because people are sharing what they do and they're like, oh, I had this launch and I made $10 zillion in 10 minutes, and then it's books like the 4-hour work week. So we all have this thing in our head that is easy, and there's a magic bullet somewhere, and I need to find this elusive magic bullet. And there is no elusive magic bullet. It's hard work. It is all hard work. And what we lose sight of is what we actually need. So because we have all of these, competitions that we create for ourselves in our own minds, we forget what we actually need. And, for most people like us, I'm assuming we're all like really small micro business owners. What do we need? 5 clients, 10 clients, 20 people to buy my program, 100 people to read my book. It's not that much. So when you boil it down, if you need to get in front of 100 people, how many people do you need to connect with online? Maybe 2,000, 5,000. It's not millions. So why do we build these systems to attract millions of people? Let's start small. Seth Godin has this blog post called "Almost No One," and I'll share the link that you can share. I'll just put it in the comments later. But it's basically, when you try to reach everybody, you reach nobody. So he goes through the post and he says, okay, so who is you need to make a decision. Who is your almost no one? And when you realize that, oh my goodness, I only need 5 clients, it becomes so much easier, because then you treat this as a relationship, as a conversation. It's not, I need to build this big monstrous thing that's going to reel in these 5 clients. Instead, go and listen, find out where those 5 clients are, and just show up and get into the conversation. Don't try to sell them, but have all of your online assets aligned and have them sell for you. So when people are curious to know more about you, they go to your website and, oh, these are the services she has. Great. But you're not doing any active selling. You're just putting out all of the assets into the world that will do the selling for you while you're building relationships. And it changes everything.
I think it makes it, when we think about it, so many things that we need to do and so many people that we need to connect with, it's this insurmountable goal. And then it's how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. But when it's maybe a dinosaur, a donkey, it's just something smaller. It makes it more palatable to sort of get into action, that we don't need to be connecting with thousands and thousands. And when you told me that, it was just like this weight lifted off my shoulders. Very obvious, but it didn't.
Because we get stuck in this, I need this, and this has to connect to this, and then this needs to connect to that, and that needs to connect to that, and if something breaks along the way, I have nothing. Several years ago, I had a successful online program. It was called the Total Social PR System, and it was really comprehensive. And I made every mistake that you could possibly make building this thing. It was massive. And it was SEO, it was content development, it was PR, social media, 7 platforms. I mean, I had everything. And it killed me because I was spending all of this time rewriting content because it was all changing so quickly that I didn't have time to like enjoy it and to like do the work with the people in the program, because I was like, I have to redo these 87 modules now. But the third time I rewrote the program, I rewrote it really well, and I've used it over the years. Um, Instead of having big programs, what we had was some instruction and some strategy sessions around the different big concepts in the program, and then we had single action strategy sheets that I set up like recipes. So they were all numbered, and there were SEO sheets, and there were PR sheets, and there were social media sheets, and then whatever your end result was that you wanted, I would say, okay, use these 5 action sheets, and that would give you the end result. And I shut down that program maybe 4 or 5 years ago because it was eating me alive. And one of the moments of release, the biggest moments of release in my life was letting that program go. And it was tied into who I was. At the time, the name of my business was Social Sage PR. And I was the sage. And all of these people came to me to get this advice and this wisdom and this information, but there was nothing left of me. So let me just finish one sec. So when I shut that program down, I have everything in a Dropbox, but I was an Infusionsoft with all of these things built on top of it. It was a total mess. I shut it all down. I had 70 funnels in there. I had 5,000 people on my mailing list. I shut the entire thing down. I moved to Active Campaign with like 1 funnel, and my mailing list, I cut my mailing list down to a couple hundred people, and I let my entire team go.
So you took something massive that we think that we need to have, right, in order to make this money and be successful, which is often someone else's version of what success is, that when we slow down and really look at it, and you simplified it, and it still was somewhat consuming you.
Yes.
But you realize that. And I just want to ask the audience, again, whether you're live or on the replay, how often have you had a difficult time stepping away from something that you've invested so much time in, but also it's part of your identity? I know I did the same thing when I was a caterer. I had people literally say, you can't stop catering. I'm like, oh, really? But it was a part of my identity, and that I allowed it to be a part of my identity. And that made it very difficult for me to make the choice to step away. And now you've taken all of this and moved it into the most beautiful, and this is where I want to sort of double down on the whole strategy piece, into the Gather method, which can I just say, cheers.
That's
I
so
just want to make sure that we reply to Leora. Honestly, sharing with the people in our network allows us to reinforce successes and learn from mistakes. I take so much advice from my smart friends. I'm learning a lot today. Thank you, Lee.
Oh.
Listen to Donna. This woman knows exactly what she's whipped me in shape a couple of times. But Donna took all of this and really funneled it down to the core, the base that never changes. And this is what I love about the work that Donna does, and why I'm so excited to bring her to you, not only because she's a dear friend and I absolutely love her, but because she's created this thing called the Gather method, which doesn't change. I mean, all algorithms and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and TikTok and whatever, right? We're always trying something new, which is what originally was eating you, right? With that humongous thing that you had. Now it's the Gather method, which teaches you how to listen. So I'm just going to hand it off to you and let you really share that, because with that strategy has changed the way I listen, which means it changes the way that I interact with my clients, with my colleagues when I'm online, and it is just beautiful. So
thank you. So I'm just going to continue the story a little bit so you have all the pieces. But when I let my program go, I also rebranded and I changed the name of my business because I didn't know how to pull myself out from being the sage without calling it something else. So I became Social Pivot PR and I pulled myself out of the middle of it. And then it was about the work, it wasn't about me, which was enormous in itself. But I always struggled because what I did was a combination of social media, PR, and SEO. And I don't have any formal training in any of this. And,
Which is amazing because you're brilliant in it.
thank you. The whole imposter syndrome thing comes out because, I've created something that, when I started doing this, people put it together now, but I mean, I started doing this in like 2008. Nobody was doing this. Nobody wanted it. I would tell people what I was doing and they were like, why don't you just do newsletters? I was like, I don't want to do newsletters. I want to do this.
You were clear. You knew who you was wanting to get in front of. Like you had it down, which is beautiful.
But I always had that. I never understood how to talk about it in a cohesive way because I was stuck in, I'm not an expert in any of these things, so I'm just putting things together, and I was just the putter togetherer. But I'm way more than that because I have vision and I can see things that people can't see, and I own that now. This all came together last year. I had a health issue, and I'm good now, so I'm glad about that. But I was forced into taking time off of work, and that gave me the space to think about what I really do. And when I was getting to the point of coming back to work, I realized I can't just do this for anybody anymore because I was just spitting out this amazing strategy for people that they couldn't even hear me because it was way more than what they needed. So I needed to find a way to, take my own medicine and find the right people to work with that can embrace this. And I was like, but I need to call it something. What am I calling this? And then I realized I don't do any of those things. What I do is I help people gather all of the things that they need. And this is where my vision comes in because I can see these things in the, dark corners of the interwebs that they can't see and pull this together into a cohesive plan. So then they have this, I hate to say the word blueprint, it's more like a journey map, of where they can go to find these people and how they can connect with them and how it can be organic and human and feel natural instead of forced, and how you don't need like this big complex thing to make it happen. And
I want you to repeat that if you would. We don't need this big, complex thing. I'll repeat it to make it happen. I just want to really push that one through. We think we have to do so much, but when we get laser focused, that's when you fell back in love with your business, have really become very successful, and things are flowing more. And I just want to say, Leora, I know that Donna just gave you a little information about the gather method. Leora wanted you to explain a little bit more. So if you could go just a little bit deeper when you finish, that would be great.
So when I started to put this together, I saw a stock image somewhere. It was 3 trees, and then there was the root system underneath. So this is the root system that we built. And like prior to having this little epiphany, I always was very masculine in how I explained my business, that it was about digging and there was construction equipment and foundations. And it felt very heavy and very like, it was rooted, but like not rooted in a comfortable way. It was painful.
It wasn't in alignment.
Yeah, it wasn't in alignment. But then like when I started to think about this and I like journaled on it, and I'm not a big journaler, like, my journals turn into strategies. It's just the way I operate. But when I started to write all of this out, I just felt myself like lifting, like from my ass bone up. I felt myself like lifting out of my chair because it all felt easier. And Lisa was one of the people that I reached out to because she struggled with this for a while. And it was because of the way that I spoke about it. And I said, let me run this by you. And I did this with a couple of people and they were like, oh my God, I love this. I totally get it. So I created this out of the root system. And like everything underneath like when trees and plants grow, what's above the soil changes. So that's like the social media, the conversations, the topics, the things that you're offering in your business, the connections, the people, the audience, all of that is going to change. But what doesn't change is that root system. As
Mm.
things are changing on top of the soil, what's happening under the root system is only getting stronger. And that root system is the core of who you are, your values, the work that you bring in the world, the impact that you're going to make, the ripple effect that you create by teaching whatever it is that you do to other people. Um, and this whole gather method comes together in this massive spreadsheet that's called a brain trust. And it is the keywords to use to find the people. But the keywords, it's not like big, intense SEO. And this is where I would always have these internal struggles about SEO, because I don't care about all of that. I care about the words that people are using. So what I do is I go find the words that people are typing into search engines already. And let's take those words and bake them into what you're doing. Then let's take those individual words that you use that nobody else uses and align them with the words that people are already searching for. So now your individual words get attached to these statements that people are already typing into search engines, and people start to find you.
I just want to jump in real quickly here and just highlight, going back to the beginning of what Donna and I were talking about, which is clarity of who you are, what you do, and who your clients are, allow you to gather the roots, the foundation, the underpinning of all of the social media, the work that you're doing, the marketing, the PR, whatever it may be, that is the foundation to build up from. And that won't change.
That doesn't change.
That is the gather method. So can you share, because I mean, not everyone is going to be able to work with you.
Mhm.
So what are some of the different components within that strategy? Because Donna will mention at the end, but she's got a gather method. You can go on and get different modules and whatnot, but share a little bit more tactical if you don't mind. Because again, not everyone's going to be able to work with you at the level that you normally work at now, because you've consistently listened to what it is you want to do.
Yeah, so it's understanding the words that people use, understanding where they gather. So like everything is a gathering point, right? So if people are listening to a podcast, and they have an interest or a value that draws them to that podcast, there are going to be other people that have those same interests and values that are coming to listen to that podcast as well. That makes that a great podcast for you to be interviewed on. And same thing with events. Like I will go to an event page for, from an event, whether it's virtual or in real life, and I'll look at the other speakers. So who are the other speakers, and where do you have alignment with those other speakers? What are topics that you're talking about? What are topics that are complementary? Maybe you can find a great strategic partner that way and do something together. Or if you see like the same 3 people are at these 5 events, what's going on with those 3 people? I need to be involved with those 3 people in some way. So you look, I call them the intersections. Mm-hmm. So you look for the intersections where things are happening, the intersections that you're drawn to. And those intersections are also breaking points, and breaking points are places where you can break into something. So when you approach this from a more strategic way, as opposed to I need to reach 10,000 people, I don't care who these 10,000 people are. But if you look for a couple of those intersections, and it could be following a hashtag, use a free TweetDeck account and follow a couple of hashtags that you notice people are using for a podcast or an event or a specific word, and see what kind of conversations are happening around that. And
on that campfire.
The campfire, yes.
I love what Donna calls the hashtags are the campfire.
They are campfires.
I'm like, again, that just pivoted the way that I approached hashtags. So.
And when you start to view social media posts as conversations, as opposed to just posts, they take on an entirely new life, because you can now engage. And that's one of the things that you had struggles with as well, is like, how do I engage online? And we had
one of your most challenging.
And I was like, you
I was
just had
trying
a
to slap
conversation.
therapy, which was totally fine because we've never actually been in person. You would have laughed if I
But
did a class for me.
you just have a conversation. Like, so you see what somebody writes and then you respond, and you never sell. Don't say like, oh, here's a link to my sales page, or don't even put links to like a blog post that you have. Just, keep the
Sure.
conversation going. And then, with social media, the way that I approach social media is there's two aspects to it. There's the information that you have out there, the content that you have out there that's working for you. So you schedule all that stuff in advance, so it's going out, and then you come back in, or you have somebody else scheduling that for you, whatever your situation may be. But you come back in as yourself, and you listen to these conversations around the hashtags, around the events, around the topics that you care about, and get into those conversations, meet people that way, and you can really expand your circle quickly. You keep yourself from being part of the noise, and you kind of like you go above, beyond, on around the side of the noise that's happening on social, and you can have the ability to connect with amazing people.
So, can I ask you, as a New Englander, right? We don't always jump into conversations. I know you've always told me it's like you're at the post office and people are you're talking.
I know, I'm such a New Yorker.
I'm from Maine. I would never do that.
I'm such a New Yorker. Every conversation is mine.
But can you give some examples, because I found it so helpful in our work together, that some examples of how to jump in. It doesn't have to be this epiphany. It doesn't have to be
Not at all.
brilliant. Just
It's
a couple of examples to ease people into joining conversations where they're circling around and like I was and just trying to get in.
Okay, I'm going to give a couple. One is, imagine you are at the supermarket. You're online. There are two people in front of you having a conversation. You have the answer. Can you stay out of that conversation?
I probably can't now, but I could last year. None of my business. None of my business.
And the other thing is too is, don't view it as being intrusive. View it as that you're bringing something to that conversation.
I now view it as I share, and you can tell by the furrowed brow or the lifted brow whether you should share more or just go, I'm going to pick up this bar because that looks really good.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like anything else. I mean, like, how do you approach when you go to an event? Like, let's say you go to a networking event. What is your approach to working that room? Do you walk in there and like look for a corner to sit in?
Or the
And
bar.
But do you go to the bar? Do you think you're going to talk to everybody in the room? Or do you scope the room and find a couple of people that you want to have a conversation with? And social media is the same way. You're not gonna have this big, great conversation and relationship with everybody that you meet. I mean, one of the things I tell my son all the time is that the world has more assholes than anything else. Choose wisely.
Wise words for a young man who just graduated high school. I let you go.
But you navigate that like you would in any place else. If you went to a party and there was like, there were 200 people at that party, but you really only wanted to talk to 3 of those people, what would you do to find those 3 people? How would you listen in that room? And you do the same listening on social media.
Lyra says, mindset is key. I'm being helpful rather than intrusive. Great. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Lyra, you have as much to share. Your brilliance is equal to Donna's. So jump in. And I know that you do like to jump in and have the conversation, which
Yeah,
is great.
and that really matters. And people, particularly now, okay, because now we're talking about a time where the world is kind of askew. um, People are looking for something to hold on to. They're looking for hope. They're looking for solutions. They're looking for somebody to be kind to them. Everything is just so hard right now, and that little bit of kindness, that little bit of advice, that idea, um, it can go so far. I've had experiences where, I've shared things online, and I've had people come back to me years later and tell me that it had an impact on their lives or their business or something like that. And that's so meaningful. And it was never about sales for me. I never, and like I would, like when I did my launches around my program, there was some sales stuff, but other than that, I never sell online.
But you had laid the foundation, right? So the
Yeah.
people that were there wanted to hear what's going on. So I'm noticing we're getting a little bit close to the time. So I'd love to transition if you're willing to. We've got the clarity piece, right?
Hmm.
Which is what do you do? Who do you want to work with? We've got the strategy, which is laying the foundation, digging the roots, listening, extreme listening, so you know the conversations that are going on so that you can participate and just get comfortable with what you're doing. Moving into one of the things that I find people have a very tough time with is consistency. And I know that I struggle with that. I'm doing video every week and I do it for like 2 weeks and then mayhem ensues.
Hmm.
So could you give some tips or some habits that help people to be more consistent when they're listening and aligning their choices in the way that they're showing up?
I'm going to go back to the root system. Create content, create content that is timeless. It's evergreen. So you can create content and you can
But there's
schedule.
some tips on that because when you say evergreen and timeless,
Okay.
I mean, I can tell you the first time you said that to me, I'm like, what? Like, how do I know what's timeless?
It's not attached to anything that's bright and shiny, So, how many productivity tips can you provide to people or topics or solutions that aren't going to change? Regardless of what happens in the world, it's not going to change.
Thousands.
Exactly. So if you focus the core of your content on that and you stick to a couple of subjects that you really want to be known for, like when you transitioned your catering business to just do cocktail parties. So if you were going to write a cookbook for that business, you wouldn't have like how to cook a roast beef, right? You would.
Probably not.
Yeah, so like it's the same thing. You create this content, like come up with 4 or 5 different topics that you really want to be known for and write content around those topics. So what you're doing is you're deepening your expertise and your authority in those topics.
I
And
love what you're saying. This is so, so good. Thank you.
and then you break that down. So let's say I'm just going to say I'm just going to stick with one for time, to be respectful of time. So let's say you wrote one of your topics is productivity. Under the productivity umbrella of your website, you have 20 blogs around productivity. And let's say you have 5 podcast interviews about productivity that you've done and 10 LinkedIn lives about productivity. You have a body of work now around productivity.
Would
You
you
could.
call that pillar content or
Yeah.
that be pulling it all together? Okay.
Yep, that's pillar content, or it's also called cornerstone content. It's also called content clusters. So, like, whatever you want to call it. But now you have this body of work around productivity. And if you break that down into different components, so it could be social media posts, you could make a little workshop out of it. You can create maybe a 5-day productivity challenge to build your list.
All in alignment.
All in alignment. And what you're doing, and now if you start to pull those phrases that people are already searching for, and you use some tools to do that, and you like you fill your content up with these phrases that people are already searching for. And when you do that, when you originally write the content, when you break it down, all of your content is keyword rich. All of your content is speaking to people that are already looking for that. You've got data that says people are looking for that. And now you're putting it on more powerful search engines than you have, because you're putting it on social platforms. You're putting it on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. And now you're pushing it out into the world, linking it back to your website. And what you're telling Google is, I have authority on this subject. And then if Google
Look
starts to
me.
push you up, but Google starts to push you up in the search engines because you're using the terms that they like, and you have this system of content going from your website to social, back to your website, and even to other websites. So let's say now you want to align with the people that read, Forbes magazine. So you could start to share Forbes magazine articles in your content on your social, and now you're creating this linkage with Forbes magazine.
I absolutely love that. And you taught me how to do that. So I've got a few core components that I do within my work.
Mhm.
And it's taken me some years to sort of really filter it all down. But I've done what's called a content calendar, which is a topic every single month. For me, it's been August has been habits. That's what I've been saying. I've been hot on habits. So, and then I've got a content focus for September, October, November, December. So when I find, knowing what that is, when I find a book, a podcast, a post, an article, then I can actually just take the URL and plop it into that content calendar. So when I move to October, it's probably already
Yeah.
full.
Yeah.
And you really, really taught me how to do that, because for me, it's boiled down to in taking you, I just want to share taking your expertise. I've been able to take all of my work and chunk it down to, it's really about clarity, creating that vision. The second aspect is strategy. How do we take the vision and create the strategy? The next one is consistency. How do we create the habits and the systems to create the consistency, right?
Yeah.
So everything else goes under that, underneath those. And I just wanted to share that, because now I'm thinking of things, and I want you to, and the audience, to be thinking of things. What are your main areas of focus, and what are all the different things that you talk about, and how can it go underneath each? And that is your foundation. That is your platform to launch off from.
Yeah.
So can you summarize that? Is there a specific habit that you would say succinctly?
The first thing that people, I recommend that people do, and they never do this, is look at what you already have. Because how many blog posts do we have, videos do we have, courses that we have built that nobody has seen? Take what you already have and start there.
Beautiful.
It's so much less daunting. I had one client that I worked with, the first client that I worked with on this type of thing. She had 4 years of blog posts that nobody ever saw. She had like 300 people on her list, and she just sent it out on her newsletter. And she was a sleep consultant, and she worked primarily with babies. But we were able to take all of the blog posts that she had and turn it into 6 ebooks, because she had all this content on families.
Mm-hmm.
So she wanted to branch out to work with more than babies, because there's a very short window of working with babies. And so just from the content she already had, we were able to create ebooks for infants, preschool, elementary school, middle school, high school, and preparing for college.
That's amazing.
And then that got all broken down into social posts as we were kind of reworking it. We keyworded it, and she is now very successful. She learned how to do PR. She's been on all kinds of TV shows. I think she was on Fox and Friends 50 or 60 times.
And it all goes back to what you started with, right? That gather method, that listening to yourself, what you want to do, listening and just
finding your almost no one. Because when you start with that perfect person or that perfect group of 8 or 10 or 20 people, when you grow, you're going to grow with more of that. So, if you get to 10,000 people, those 10,000 people are going to be, for the most part, they're going to be ideal clients, or just people that you want to be connected to in some way, instead of just random people. Random, I guess to sum it up, is random never works.
I love it. There's a quote, and I cannot remember what it is, but it's something about, hope is not a strategy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It is not a strategy.
Yeah.
And one thing that I always say is structure equals freedom. I work with a lot of creatives and entrepreneurs, and I went into business so I could have all of this freedom, right? So they push back when I try to help implement strategy and outlining, creating some structure throughout their day and throughout their life. But here's the thing that I really want to drive home: the people with the most amount of structure have the most amount of freedom, financial and time, because they're getting the things done that they want to and need to create the business and the life that they want to live. And this all comes back to habits, right? We are what we repeatedly do.
Mhm.
And so often we try to change a behavior that we've got going on, which is randomness, not organizing, inconsistency, jumping into action without having a strategy. We do that without looking at what is our belief system that's driving that behavior for us to do so. So then we just continue to create more of the same, hoping for something different. What is that? Was it Freud that said that? The meaning of
Oh, yeah,
insanity or
yeah,
something like
yeah, I
that.
forget who said that.
Yeah.
Um, well, but here's the thing about social media, about creating habits around social media, and getting help with social media. The big red flag for me is when somebody will come to me and say, "Can you do my social media?" You can't do social media. Social media it's a thing.
Mhm.
It's something to be involved in. It's your voice. It's the most important thing you have. And I'm assuming I'm talking to people that are individual business owners, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, micropreneurs, whatever you want to call yourselves. But until you can go through taking your voice online effectively, you cannot have somebody else do it for you.
Mhm.
You can have people do all kinds of tasks for you, but you need to show up and be in that conversation. We all look through a different lens based on our experiences, our relationships, the things we've done, the things that we're holding in the back of our head that we're not sharing with anybody yet. And if you let somebody else be your voice, your eyes, your ears to what's happening in social media, you're not going to have the same results because you're going to see things differently than somebody that's just coming in to do tasks for your business. You're going to see something, you will see opportunities. They won't see opportunities.
I love it. I love it. All right, we're coming to the end here. So you need to know what you want to do. You need to
Yeah,
know,
you need to know what you want to do
you got to know what you want to do
and who
because
you want to do it
you,
for.
right?
Yeah,
Right. Create the strategies and the habits that are going to support that. Listen with the intent to really learn what's going on. We don't need that many people. Build your foundation, right? And create those habits that will support you.
yeah. And when you are creating habits around this work, use tools. If you have questions about tools, just tag me and I'll share some of the tools that I use. But you really do need to use tools to be able to do this because it's just so massive. And there are so many tools that are expensive and you don't really need them.
I will, you've given me so many tools that are free or pretty minimal expense that at the level of business that I'm not a, you know, I don't have 500 people working for me
Yeah.
and we're just fine. You are just a wealth of information.
And you can cobble tools together that will do the same thing as some of the higher priced ones and really build a lot of intelligence. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the intelligence that you can find because people are sharing things every day online. And the place where people will share the most that they would not share any other time is in a Google search.
Really? Yeah. Yeah.
They will type things in a Google search because they're looking for something. And when you can really start to do it, like I learned about, I've been doing this for years. I didn't realize it was a thing, but search listening.
Mhm.
So when you can start to listen to what these searches are and what
Can you
people,
talk just, we are basically at the top of the hour here, but can you take 30 seconds and explain what search listening is so that someone can do it?
yeah, you listen to what people are searching. So like you type a term into Google, look at what pops up. So
There's
what
a
pops up at
list
the
below
bottom,
what you
what
typed in.
pops up on the side, all the little boxes. Those are the things that Google is saying are associated to what you're looking for. And then I look at the search results to make sure that I would want to be in those search results because sometimes you don't. But that's a great way to just do a quick and easy keyword research to figure out what people are looking for. And if you searched in like productivity hacks and you look and see what else Google is telling you to look at, that's a great way to see related topics.
Yeah, more blog posts, more alignment.
Yeah.
So I just want to sum up with Leora said, so many marvelous, inspiring ideas. Thank you so much, Lisa and Donna. I'd love a tool list, please. So you can go back in and pop that in.
Mhm.
Tease the next, yep, all right. Yes, so a couple of things. One, what was your biggest takeaway? Donna just shared an amazing amount of insight and brilliance and really just distilled down so many years of her experience. I'd love it if you can pop in the comments section. What is your biggest takeaway? What else would you like to hear from Donna? Pop in some questions. She is a wealth of information. I just want to say my biggest takeaways is I absolutely loved who is your almost no one, because that just sums it up so beautifully. Everything is a gathering point, right? So we can just be looking at everything has a gathering point and look for the intersections. Really slow down and listen and look for those intersections. So if you could post what your biggest takeaway, that would be great. And then I also wanted to ask Donna, where, if people want more information on the work that you do to learn more about the Gather method, which is just a phenomenal series of classes that you can take, where can they find you? Where would you like for them to reach out?
On my website, socialpivotpr.com. I'm on all the social platforms, so you can reach me there. And I do have this Gather masterclass that I was doing once a month, and I haven't been doing them because I've been so busy. But I will pick them up again in a month or so, as soon as like this project that I'm working on calms down a little bit, because I'm working like 15 hours a day. And but it's for a short period of time. But if you're interested in taking that, there's a page on my website that you can learn more about it, and just, let me know that you're interested. If I have people that are interested, I'll put one together. I just don't have time to kind of market it and
it's brilliant.
The mechanics of filling it up. But it's 4 hours of you will come out of there thinking differently.
And have a plan in hand. So
Yeah,
Donna,
and it's small. I don't 10 is the most that I ever take, but I'd like to keep it around 6 people.
that's great. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking your time to share your brilliance with us. Absolutely appreciate it. I also want to say next week on the 27th, next Thursday at noon, I'm going to be interviewing Kate Payne from Standing Out Online. She's also a dear friend, colleague, LinkedIn expert. So she's going to be sharing so many fabulous things about LinkedIn. So please join. I'll be posting something about that soon, or just follow my thread, my profile on LinkedIn. There'll be all sorts of information there. Thank you so much. I hope you took away, took notes after notes after notes. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, everyone. We'll talk to everyone later.
Okay, have a great day, everyone.